Hey! Critiques. So for our first volunteer, we have this artist with, I guess she took the kids, huh? This is already shaping up to be a great episode. I guess we'll start with the face. Around this area, I don't know if you can see it after the video has been processed and whatnot, I noticed some very slight blurriness. It is most noticeable when you compare the lines of the fish and the lines of the eyebrows. It's obviously not a huge problem, but something I think they should be aware of. Moving on to the eyes. I had some trouble finding the lines where the whites of the eyes ended and where the rest of the face began. I'm glad that they didn't put black lines around the entirety of the eye, but maybe a slight extension to this line could help. Another thing I want to add is that the whites of the eyes are often not purely white, surprisingly. In a realistic portrait, the eyes would be much more gray, but in a simplified art style like this, they can get away with much brighter eyes. However, I do think that a grayish shadow below the top of the eyelid can give them much more depth and help signify where the eyes are located. When it came to the rest of the body, again it's simplistic. There's not too much to say on that front other than it looks like it fits. I would like to see some more attention directed toward the hands. Hands in art can be used as a tool to be more expressive. The hands in this could be larger in both width and length, one to give the rest of the body some more balance, and two to give some more room for the fingers. This hand could benefit a lot from some variety in finger placement. The fingers usually have a curve to them even when gripping something. It could be useful to experiment with that. This appears to be some kind of spider creature with a box cutter in his hand. There's some writing at the bottom that describes the scene if you want to read that. The first thing I noticed is the hand positions, especially in this right hand. I'm going to try and replicate that pose. This seems a little awkward, don't you think? I don't know what else to add other than grip a knife for yourself and study that. I just hope I'm not looking at this wrong. They seem to be attempting a kind of backlit low red light effect. What they did was okay, and I appreciate the experimentation, but there are some things that could have been improved upon. I found some photos that kind of have a similar lighting, but more intense. It was difficult to find something close to this drawing. The values so far are weak. It doesn't have to be that intense, but there could be some more contrast to make forms stand out. The lighting around the body doesn't seem to adhere to a physical form. It just very consistently wraps around the body with a gradient, like some kind of red mist. Maybe some rim lighting around the body could give the impression that this character is backlit. The line work is not confident, especially in the hands. I would just go over this again because right now it looks more like a rough sketch. When I first saw this, I was a bit confused as to what angle they were going for. Obviously, I can tell this is supposed to be a bright picture of an anime-leaning art style with sprinkles of realism. It's the position of the character that I'm worried about. I think I was mainly thrown off by the head and its placement. My best guess was that they were going for a kind of semi-bird's eye view. This could have been achieved by putting the figure in a box. This allows for the angle and the forms to be drawn more consistently since you are simplifying it for a certain perspective. Anatomically, it isn't too bad. It looks like the character is in a kind of slouch, but that may be intentional. The biggest trouble area to me is the head. Again, I don't know if the extreme differences in size in the eyes is intentional, but if it's not, I would suggest putting some guiding lines according to the angle of the head they're going for. If it's in a 3/4 view, you may see some slight size difference in the right eye, but nothing close to being this extreme. Right now, the guiding lines are curved when they should be relatively straight in accordance with the planes of the face. The position of the head is also strange, to say the least. I believe they are attempting to make her appear shy. Maybe this coincides with the slouch. This position makes me believe that her neck is much shorter than average. I think this could be fixed by paying attention to the angle of the head, which seems to be a trouble area. This is simply a case of putting a little more work into the structure. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but if they are going for some kind of shy position, I would mess around more with the pose. Right now it's very bland. Her arms are at her side and she's standing very stiffly. I would suggest moving the arms into some sort of hand cross position, one of those stereotypical messing with their own fingers kind of stances. Maybe the legs could be set closer together. That could be something fun to mess around with. Moving on to the background. I would like to see a clearer separation between the water and the sand. Right now they seem to blend into each other in a white mist. This should then be followed by an area where the sand can be seen underneath the water, and then continued with bright blue water. Now I'm no flat earther, but the horizon line appears to curve very slightly. Now unless this character is the size of a mountain, that shouldn't be the case. Finally, the white streaks on the water look rushed. There are many ways to add texture to beach water. You could have some slightly more consistent white streaks for some waviness. You could leave it looking still with some variations of color. You could make it rougher with some more defined waves. Either way, I highly suggest studying from real life. I'm glad that they are working on backgrounds to go with their characters, but more study is required. This is a redraw of a screenshot in Steven Universe, and we have the rare privilege of seeing a redraw that is actually better than the original. Or at least more expressive. I guess I'll start with the face. Throughout most of the piece, and especially around the face, there's this slight blurriness to it. I don't know if that is an effect of the lighting, but it does make it hard to look at least up close. Blurriness away from the center is fine and can give off a cool effect, but putting it at the focal point does not help. The lighting around the face is kind of tilted. There seems to be a slightly darker shade that crosses the face diagonally, and breaks up what would otherwise be a much more cinematic effect. Steven himself is asymmetrical and tilted. In the original image, he looks like he's looking upward with a relatively confident pose, while in this one he seems very slightly drunk. Even his hair is kind of squashed. The artist said that the hands were one of the only things that bothered them, and for good reason. While they are more expressive, they aren't properly segmented. In the left hand, for example, you have this last segment, which bends upward like it's broken for some reason. Then in the right hand, we have this finger, which appears to have a much longer middle section, and a far shorter final section. On top of this, instead of tapering the skin to fit the segment, it comes out to try and make the entire finger maintain the same width. Then in the pinky, you have what looks like one very long section, connected by a piece of skin that looks like the connection to another thumb. And finally, in the left hand, the pinky is just absurdly small. It all just comes down to the construction, really. I would have liked to see some more lighting effects on Steven himself. You have this huge source of light that draws the eye in, and Steven is kind of left in the dark. This is one of the things that I think the reference image did better. Finally, I have one last minor complaint about the small cuts in the walls on either side, which really could have just been given more cleanup for the final product. Again, I like that it is more expressive. I really like the liveliness of the hands despite the distortions in anatomy. It has a lot of detail. At first glance, most people won't really notice that much wrong with it, but it really comes down to the construction of the hands and cleaning up. So, since last time we ended with a K-pop drawing referenced from a real photo, I think it would be appropriate if we ended off with the same thing in this video. Seriously, is this like its own genre or something? If people are concerned with tracing, no, I do not believe this is traced. I laid the drawing on top of the photo, and there are many places where they do not line up. It's close, but not perfect. I would just like to mention how spot on the jacket is. It's kind of funny, the texture, lighting, and colors are almost perfect. The rest of the drawing, by comparison, seems unfinished and rushed. Usually it's the other way around, where people put a lot of care into the face and wimp out at the clothes, because of the complicated creases. Looking through the rest of their gallery, faces do seem to be a trouble area, especially eyes. I think the best approach to improve this is to first start with getting some stronger values in. The neck area is significantly darker than the face. I would pay attention to the warm sunlight and its effects that you can observe in the reference photo. Another thing I would like to touch on is the dark pencil lines used to outline aspects of the face. This is fine for like an early sketch, but this needs to be separated in value. This is shown clearly in the ear, where this pit is pretty much black, while over here it's many shades of purple and red. This outline problem also carries over to the jacket, surprisingly. For this I would start bringing in the darker colors that were used on the jacket and give more variety to the separating lines, rather than one consistent black line. For the face, there's practically no shading or variations in color. They did this very well on the jacket, so I'm going to assume this is just a consequence of rushing, or this is just unfinished. As for the hair, a person in the comments actually gave some sound advice. The only thing I would add to that is to increase the light value on the hair. Hell, you could probably get away with putting solid white for most of the top. Anyway, that was critiquing stuff. Sorry for this taking so long to make. I was on vacation and stuff. My name is Solar Sands, and goodbye.